All right, very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us on the topical discussion on the Morning Breeze right about now, where we will be dissecting more issues about the state of affairs currently, the state of politics, but also where is the opposition headed. Very, very soon during the next month, we will be having the swearing-in ceremony of not only members of parliament, but also the swearing-in ceremony of President-elect Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. But then what happens after that? What will the situation look like for the rest of the parties away from the ruling party, which will then be going ahead to implement its manifesto that they sold out during the campaigns? With me in studio, I have two distinguished gentlemen I will be discussing with and dissecting this particular issue, and one of them is a former presidential candidate, Mr. Joseph Kabuleta. It's a pleasure and honor having you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning to you. And then much later on, I will be having Professor Ogenga Latigo, a member of parliament for Agago North, as well as a former leader of opposition in parliament. But probably we are just a few months. It feels like it's been quite long ago, but we just had our elections in January. What has life been like right after the announcements that were made and another president-elect was announced?
No, life has been everything I thought it would be, because of course it looks a bit longer, this period between the election and the swearing in, because it is longer. Elections are supposed to be usually carried out in February, and then the swearing in is carried out in May.
Yes.
Now they were pulled back a month, but the swearing in was kept the same time, so it's a bit of a lull in between there. But it's been necessary for, first of all, some of us to regroup ourselves, and then to see what it is going to be like for us in the future. Perhaps 5 years, perhaps less. We don't know anything possible. But we have to now start moving as opposition in the direction of plotting for what Uganda is going to be like post NRM, post Museveni. And I think those two will kind of go together. So what is it going to be like after this? Because a lot of the opposition before this, excuse me, has been about how to get him off. Okay. Now, what if he got off suddenly? Are we ready? Are we ready to take up the mantle? Are we going to see what happened in Chad, where the military council installs his son? Now, that for me is absolute nightmare scenario for Uganda.
Are you afraid that that could happen? Probably, in any case, do you expect that would happen in Uganda as well?
I expect there will be people who would want it to happen that way. But that would be, for me, absolute nightmare scenario for Uganda, because we've waited this long, and we expect to have a democratically elected president after this, not one who is installed because of his genes, not one who is installed
but you
because
know,
they
for
have
the
been taken
case
to the
of Chad, you know, for the case of Chad, Mr. Kabuleta, is that it was a sudden one. Dabi had just been elected,
Yes.
goes on the front line, he's killed. What would you expect would be the scenario for an interim government in such a case?
The thing is this, every time you see a president get off and his son get in, you know that we are retrogressing, because that is a monarchical way of thinking. And you know that they supposed, in Tanzania, there was a vice president. Magufuli has sons, okay? None of them was being taken through the system to be next in line. So there is a constitution. And now the person who was in line in the constitution took over. It was sudden. Also, he had just been elected. Not as immediately, but he had also just been elected, just beginning his 5-year term. So it's just that we can look at the direction of Tanzania, or we can look at the direction of countries like Togo, countries like Equatorial Guinea, countries like Chad, now, where you see that the presidency has been kept within, the family, or certain people's families, their demas, and so on, and you see it's being passed on from one person to the next, and turn into a monarchical scenario. Now, what happens usually in cases like that is when it goes from there to the next level, to the next generation, then people become despondent.
Okay.
And the next thing you see is people are moving out of the country en masse to go and look for opportunities somewhere, because they have realized that it's going to be enough of, more of the same.
There is no future.
Now, the one thing we have in our advantage, if we can say it that way,
okay,
is that we do not have a 38-year-old who is beginning an endless term. Okay, we have probably somebody who is, 50 years older than that. Okay, 40 years older than that. Sorry, my calculations failed me. I'm not trying to imply something different, but so at least that we know that there's some end in sight.
There is an exit soon.
There is an
That's what
exit
you're
soon.
saying.
Although all others were removed, the term limits, but there is an exit because you cannot remove the biological exit.
Okay, all right. I'll be coming to you, Mr. Kabuleta. Let me come on to Honorable Oginga or Latigo. The post-election period, and especially looking at the aspect of the opposition, what has it been like for you?
Well, good morning, Mildred, and good morning, Mr. Kabuleta and the viewers. The traffic jam in Kampala is always crazy.
Oh, yes,
so
yes.
I came a bit late. But every year that passes, every election that passes in Uganda brings new challenges. And this particular one brought an incredible challenge. First of all, the generational challenge became very obvious. And then secondly, there's a shift in the opposition leadership.
Yes.
From the party and the group that have been traditionally known to a completely new lot. And then post-election, there have been responses that we have not seen before, where there are extensive arrests, there are violence, there's anger. And we all participate in social media. You just look at the scale of I would even dare say, hatred that goes on, the exchanges, the bitterness. I mean, even me, I've been in politics for a while. This is new. And calls for an immediate review of where we are and where we can possibly go if we don't do something.
A review. What sort of review would you be looking at in this case?
It has to be on all sides. I mean, whether we like it or not, we are all Ugandans. And that fact is not going to change. We are Ugandans, and whether Latigo lost an election or Kabuleta won an election, we remain Ugandans. And the outcome of that election, if that outcome creates a difference, which is even more fundamental than the campaigns, then you have to worry. And for somebody like me, I want to my few years left to be peaceful, to be less troublesome.
All right.
And when I see potential danger, I get very worried, and it is my national responsibility to sound the alarm bell.